Top 10 Best Simpsons Characters.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
10.
10. Kang and Kodos. These two aliens appear in every single Treehouse of Horror episodes. On a few occasions has appeared in regular episodes, including in particular crossover. The stories they star in are some of the best parodies on the show. Two angry aliens that gives good humor over the year, even in short cameos. They came from a distant planet to keep constantly watch over Earth to one day conquer it. They do know the recurring aliens from Futurama, further proving both shows are connected to each other. I love both of their voices for Halloween special characters. However, they don't bring enough to put them any higher on my list.
9.
9. Itchy and Scratchy. Of course you knew this was coming. Itchy and Scratchy are the most violent Simpsons characters, and parody of classic cartoons such as Tom and Jerry, Mickey Mouse and Looney Tunes. These two will do anything. Mostly Scratchy gets killed in such horrible ways in regular episodes, which is similar to some of the goriest Treehouse of Horror episodes. Itchy is crazy as he will tempt even very bad things to Scratchy. Yet Scratchy is surprisingly kind for a cat. I only met one cat in real life like that, and she's currently one of my pets. Now because they are cartoon within another cartoon following classic cartoon rules. You never will be amazed just how much these two can get together. They even cameo on many of their Simpsons stuff over the years, including video games. You would never guess the original Itchy and Scratchy originated in the Simpsons shorts, with the second least changes to any Simpsons character. Also in Season 6 episode introduced in theme park inspired by the show. If this place was real in real life, I would be going there for a family vacation to LOL.
8.
8. Krusty. Krusty hosts a kids show to entertain children almost every day. Like most celebrities, Krusty got to experience both the highs and lows of being one. Krusty has done a lot of bad things, but when he man-ups to something like that, you will be surprised how much he changes. With earlier episodes he had funnier jokes, most of which wasn't on that kid show. I am not kidding. A lot of episodes center around Krusty, with some having the same joke about him going to quit until something happens to stay in the business. Krusty is a Jewish clown inspired by a clown that used to be on a kid show in real life. Krusty is one of those so in between good and bad moments on the show. For me personally, he had more good ones to count for this list. Maybe not the funniest character on this list, but one of the more memorable ones. What's crazy is he originally appeared in the Simpsons short with a complete character change for the show. I'm not kidding.
7.
7. Dr. Hilbert, and doctor that treats a lot of people in the town of Springfield. Despite being a doctor, he usually comes off being silly like in Robin Williams' movie. Like Krusty, he too has a lot of good and bad moments. But you can agree he is one of the better supporting characters this show has to offer. Dr. Hilbert is surprisingly uplifting when serious stuff happens to other characters to keep things going instead of you simply turning your TVs off. So many episodes, even including those that don't involve him treating anyone, he appears a lot off work. Another recurring joke I remember that they don't do anymore for unexplained reasons. He once stated that he had many brothers but doesn't know who they are. What we do know is this guy has an interesting sense of humor to maybe get you laughing.
6.
6. Apu. Easily the character with the longest name on both lists. Apu is Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons' favorite character. Apu runs a small store that you will see so often on the show. Some of his insults are hilarious with some bad habits, makes him an interesting character. Also the only character to originally not born in the USA with one of the biggest families in the show's history. Apu is an inspiring character that most sitcoms love referencing, even The Big Bang Theory. He too has episodes centered around him that really opens your eyes to him. Easily the best supporting character of the show, as sometimes he gives advice or gets help from The Simpsons. Apu also is relatable for any cartoon character that I wish there was more people like him working in similar place in real life. A few years ago, to help sponsor the movie, some 7-Elevens became his store for a little while.
5.
5. Grampa Simpson. One of my favorite Simpsons characters ever. I'm sure most of you had at least one grandpa in the war. Grampa Simpson is directly inspired by those people, thus making him very relatable. Sometimes he helps with problems as well as had episodes centering around him. And character that originally appeared in the Simpsons shorts with the least changes of any character. Abe usually comes off being one of the funniest characters. Grampa Simpson may have an hard to piece together life, but a very interesting one. The second most interesting old character with humor done well puts him high on this list.
4.
4. Mr. Burns. The most recurring Simpsons villain, Homer's boss and easily the most selfish Simpsons character to date. Mr. Burns is not only one of the oldest, but one of the richest characters that terrorized Springfield for years. Usually gets help from his assistant Smithers with surprisingly well-placed humor even in newer episodes. This man will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Plus he has every disease known to mankind, including some made-up ones, and still alive for over 100 years old. They aren't constant with characters' ages, especially with this guy. Without question the most interesting old character with so much to offer with great episodes centering around him. How can't he not be on this list? In fact, he always was one of the greatest Simpsons characters.
3.
3. Sideshow Bob. The only guest star character to be on either lists. Sideshow Bob started as Krusty's assistant until he framed him, so he could have a show of his own. After getting caught, he attempted to kill Bart a few times over the years with other horrible schemes. At one point was the mayor of a town in Italy. Almost every Sideshow Bob episode is worth re-watching with amazing acting. Kelsey Grammer, along with Principal Skinner, is one of Bart's nemesis on the show. He too has plenty of good and bad moments, but him more than enough to put him high on this list. Sideshow Bob is easily one of the best cartoon villains I ever seen in any cartoon show.
2.
2. Homer. Ever since the beginning of me getting into the show, Homer was always very high up on my list with plenty of episodes centering around him. Not only he gets a lot of funny recurring jokes with more than enough moments to please everyone. So many people can relate to him that I bet most wish he was your father. Homer is simple-minded guy that usually happy with so many things to piss him off. Peter Griffin from Family Guy to some degree was inspired by Homer on this show. I never heard of anyone that officially had more jobs than Homer. I could be here all day talking about that. Anyway, Homer never fails to entertain you.
1.
1. Bart. Honestly, this was very close between Homer and his son Bart for the top spot. But Bart did more surprising things over the years. He does have some of his dad's traits with some of his own. Often considered to be one of the worst students in his school. At times loves pranking people, including the staff, especially Principal Skinner. Like a lot of Simpsons characters, a lot of people can really relate to Bart in so many ways. Actually more than Homer, which was another reason he got this spot. Like some characters, he too has a lot of episodes centered around him. His personality really stands out more so than Homer, with almost as much funny recurring jokes. This kid did things to his school you wouldn't believe. An interesting behind the creation of The Simpsons related to the original shorts. Matt Groening at the last minute drew characters based and named after his own family, while substituting Bart after his name. So many Simpsons fans really love Bart, that they simply can't get enough of him and his dad. Bart does dumber things than Homer with little to no respect for authority. Another interesting fact, if you ever heard of Dennis the Menace, some of his bad traits were created due to how disappointed he was in Dennis the Menace. So he made Bart a little monster, that even his own family was scared to do anything at times. For me, Bart always will be the greatest Simpsons character ever.
Yeah.